Namaste, everyone. We offer reverent salutations to Sri Durga, the ever pure and resplendent one, who grants the supreme boon of true knowledge to the devotees. Om, peace, peace, peace. And it's fitting because we are entering into Navaratri. India, I think, has already launched into it. And for us, it begins tomorrow for 9 days. And on that score, the opening chant for this class should be this beautiful chant out of the Tantras, which links the meaning in everything to the Divine Mother of the universe. Om Mantranam Jiva Bhuta Puya Smrita Shakti Rupaya Tatahina Vadarohe Nishpalaha Sharada Pravat. Om, peace, peace, peace. She, whom the seers know to be the imperishable Shakti, is the inmost meaning of all the slokas and sutras of the revealed scriptures. Without her, O fair one, the clouds, the tattvas, would be like clouds with no rain. She is the perfect I consciousness inherent in all the multitude of words, and the secret of all mantras, whose being is the essence of non-duality. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. So today we are finishing up verse 20 of the Encomium, and you may have noticed that this class has been renamed as Obstacles and Solutions in Spiritual Life. All of it leads to meditation because it's through the portal of concentration, meditation, that we get into samadhi. But so many other things lead us along that. So when we left off last time, I had shown a chart that showed the three features of the revealed scriptures as eternal, unborn or unoriginated, or birthless without origination, and also not of human authorship. And we looked at, the setup of the Vedas and the 4 books and how it's separated into the Karma Kanda, which has to do with rites and rituals and prayers, and then also with the Jnana Kanda, which is all about this supreme wisdom, which was the realizations of the rishis. And then we went through just a little bit about the auxiliary scriptures. And so we left the 6 darshanas for this class. And they need to be presented in more of a setting than last time provided. We can't take these darshanas out of the context of what gave rise to them. They don't exist in a vacuum. They rest on a foundation of values, virtues, and something so unique to India, a personal and societal set of disciplines that supported the rise of enlightened beings. And this is what brought forth the philosophical systems that help beings attain the highest good, liberation. So knowing this foundation is really important. We could say, oh, that's all cultural. Oh, that belongs to India. Did Vivekananda bring that to us? maybe not specifically, but his whole being exuded it. And all of his brother disciples who came out to the West, to the United States, and to Europe. So the way that that it falls together is sublime, and it makes me remember a conversation or correspondence that I had with Swami Brahmananda, which I'm sure I've said before. Not Swami Brahmananda, Swami Brahmeshananda. That in order to establish a sannyasin stage of life, it takes 500 years of purified and dedicated householder existence. 500 years. So let's look at what went into that. And before we begin, let me just share with you this quote from Swami Vivekananda. He described his master's message to humanity. First, make character. That is the highest duty you can perform. Know truth for yourself, and there will be many to whom you can teach it afterwards. They will all come. This was the attitude of my master. I learned from my master that the religions of the world are not contradictory or antagonistic. They are but various phases of one eternal religion. And of course, this holds true of all that arose in terms of philosophical schools and different religious groupings in India. So let me shift this over here and bring up a chart. So here's the setting. And something that crossed my mind as I was giving those introductory words is that in the West, as far as I know, what I've seen in Christianity, Catholicism, at least modern Islam, and so forth, maybe less so with Judaism. In ancient Judaism, there was, stages of life that I'm aware of. But the kind of personal discipline that comes close to what ancient Vedic culture was like, and even going forward from the ancient times, you only saw in the monasteries of the West. But here we saw it in the daily life of people. So let's first talk about Sanatana Dharma and Yuga Dharma. When we were talking about the Shruti, that which is to be heard, that which deals with the truth, what we can say about it is that it concerns Satya, truth, the universal, unchanging, eternal truths regarding Brahman, ultimate reality, Ishvara, Brahman, from the standpoint of the universe, the Jiva, the embodied soul, and Jagat, the phenomenal universe, and their mutual relationships. That is eternal. It doesn't change. Time, space, causation, nothing changes that. And so the Shruti scriptures are focused on Sanatana Dharma. Now, the Yuga Dharma here is an umbrella term, and it refers to the practical aspect of Satya that upholds the universe and leads to the good, the highest good. Now, when that is spoken of in terms of the cosmic order, it is called Rita. I remember early on, Babaji always saying, as soon as he said this word, he just loved it because it's the earliest known word for truth. And in this context, it is that truth in the cosmic order, which is often translated, I believe, as law, L-A-W, law. So not law in the judicial sense, but just the laws that operate harmoniously, the universe, the cosmic order. Then this Dharma, in terms of, and Satya, in terms of action and moral order, is called karma, the law of cause and effect. Thus, Yuga Dharma is focused on the ordering of human life, social and religious, to realize the truths in relative life. So, whether they say it or not, this idea of Jivan Mukti, and we also know that it's not only that Jivan Mukti that results eventually in, after this is liberation and life. That liberation can be of a non-dual order. It can also be of a devotional order. One is liberated in the context of the relationship with Ishvara. So there's two aspects of it that we should always keep in mind. Always keep it all inclusive, like Sri Ramakrishna did. So when the scriptures talk about this Dharma, and in all these different ways, when it comes down to the in terms of action and moral order, it becomes this Yuga Dharma. And that means that it's focused on ordering human life, and it shifts over ages and locations, but it must always defer to the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal truths. If a local, let's say a regional truth conflicts with the eternal truth, then the eternal truth has to take precedent. And we naturally see that there's a lot of friction in that area. And there's especially a lot of friction when the Yuga Dharma is in decline. So, but what we see here is we are on the rise of the new Yuga Dharma that was brought by Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. So India's auxiliary scriptures, they include the religious, spiritual, and religious, social, and secular topics, all of these, all oriented towards the material well-being and the highest good of all, Abhyudaya and Nishreyasa. So all those auxiliary scriptures that tend towards social, economic, that talk about caste, that talk about the stages of life, that talk about secular things, they're all supposed to be oriented towards this Abhyudaya, and which also shows up in the Vedas, and ultimately for the purpose of leading beings to the highest good, Nishreyasa. So the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, is an essential scripture for almost every grouping in India, and essential for us. And in terms of this moral order, this religious ordering of life, etc., this wheel of life that's presented by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita in the chapter on action. I've brought it here, and let's all just read it together, because this has so much to do with lower truth to higher truth and keeping a harmony in life. If beings can just follow this, then there would be so much more harmony in the world today. And with that harmony, it would be easier for people to move into higher and higher spiritual ideals. The world is bound by actions other than those performed for the sake of yagya worshipful sacrifice. Do therefore, O Arjuna, earnestly perform action selflessly for this yagya alone, free from attachment. Having created mankind in the beginning, together with this worshipful sacrifice, this spirit of service, the Prajapati, the progenitor, said, "By this shall you propagate. This shall be the milk cow of your desires." So, in other words, keep the harmony with all levels of being and sacrifice, perform worship, and what is needed will naturally arise. Cherish the devas with this. And who are the devas here? They're the cosmic principles personified. They are also there existing in us, in our minds, and in our bodies as our senses. Cherish the devas with this, and may those devas cherish you. Thus, cherishing one another, you shall reap the supreme good. Cherished by yagya, the devas will bestow on you the enjoyments you desire. A thief, verily, is one who enjoys what is given by them without returning them anything. And this pertains also not just in terms of the cosmic order of deities and what Sri Krishna is going to say next. This has to do even with our interpersonal relationships here on earth. The good who eat the remains of yagya are freed from all sins, all impurities. But those who cook food only for themselves verily eat sin. So they're one of those personal disciplines in life that was just part of throughout the day was that one did not eat anything that hadn't been offered to God, whether it was ceremonially or within, outside of the ceremonial ritual, but nothing was ever eaten without offering it first to God. So those who eat the remains of yagya are freed from all impurities. But those impure ones who cook food only for themselves, they verily eat impurity. From food come living beings, and from rain comes the food. From yagya, rain proceeds. Yagya is born of action. No action, karma, to have risen from the Veda, and the Veda from the imperishable. So, when Veda is spoken of at this time, we're not talking about books. We're talking about that Satya that manifests in the phenomenal realm as cosmic order and harmony. The all-pervading Veda is therefore ever centered in this sacrifice, this worshipful sacrifice, always being the giver, always being in gratitude, always being in service. That one who does not follow on earth the wheel thus revolving, sinful, impure of life, and rejoicing in the senses, that one, O Partha, lives in vain. So the Gita has been around a very, very long time, and we know that as the part of 1/3 of the Prasthana Trayam of the Vedanta, that it is like a coalescence of the Upanishads and the Shruti in general that that is going from lower truth to highest truth. And it's inculcating, what's running through my mind right now is all the different places where Sri Krishna lists all kinds of different qualities that are to be inculcated. Now, in the Gita, as well as the other auxiliary scriptures, And the Gita is actually part of Shruti, at least in some renderings. Through the Itihasa, remember that's the scriptural history, among the different virtues that are inculcated in them are filial duty, parental love. This whole list, I'm going to go ahead and read it out, but I just want to say that in all the lists that we will be talking about in this class, whatever is said, there's so much more that could be said, right? As I look at this, I'm not seeing straightforwardness. That's one of the lists. But throughout the Itihasa and also in the Puranas, we are seeing this filial duty, parental love, fraternal affection, conjugal fidelity, lasting friendship, faithful service, considerateness towards the lowly, the loyalty of citizens and kingly or governmental virtues, devotion to truth and duty, kindness, mercy, forbearance, generosity, spirit of service, equanimity, heroism, fearlessness, equality of vision, devotion to the Supreme Being. All of these and so much more are cultivated through those itihasas, through the Mahabharata, through the Ramayana. And, it used to be, even in the West, that we had stories that were told when we were young that inculcated truthfulness and, just noble virtues. So I don't hear about them so much anymore. But we can look to India and see that all of these were in place and children were raised with these stories. Now, in the darshanas specifically, are some very specialized, but it's not that we don't also see them in the Puranas and in the Itihasa, in those different stories that are told as legends or mythologically or as ancient history. We're always seeing great holy beings moving through life and showing up in different parts of the stories, and they are exhibiting the yamas, right? And for anyone who doesn't know yama, who's listening to this, that's truthfulness, nonviolence, non-coveting, sense control, and non-greed. And the niyamas are austerity and purity or cleanliness, contentment, study of the scriptures, and worship of God. So that's the first group. There's 10 right there. And then discrimination, detachment and renunciation, inner peace, self-control, self-settledness, concentration, faith, longing for liberation, selflessness, true compassion and love, and again, so much more. So the point here is that the darshanas, they come out of a society where all those earlier mentioned qualities and all of those mentioned in the Gita, and think about that peace chant that we chant that says, may all the qualities cited in the scriptures, the revealed scriptures, abide within me. Abide within all of us, we who are devoted to the realization of the Atman. So I don't want to sound this, I don't think you can sound this too loudly. This is very essential. And let's see now one other part of the setting before we launch into a look at an overview of the darshanas. So life was set up according to these 4 stages of life. And it's possible to actually see, these are like principles. You know, we all start out as students, and most of us become householders. This one is a little harder to find, but if we think back in our great grandparents' time, we might see that some of our relatives or people that we heard about kind of retired, became hermit-like, and then finally sannyasa, which I don't know that the monk life in the West is to quite the same degree as the sannyasa of India. And it's not just me that is saying this. A Western monk who became known later as Swami Abhishekhananda, he was either a Jesuit or a Franciscan monk of the Catholic order. And he, when he got to India and he began to study what sannyasa meant, what it really meant, he found that it was really different than the monasticism in the West in a very crucial area. And I believe it was that the Western monastics still took the world to be real, whereas the sannyasins did not. And so, anyways, he stepped up to that. I believe he even met with Ramana Maharshi. So anyway, let's take a look at this ancient system for individual and collective well-being and enlightenment. Again, this is the setting. Remember that it takes hundreds of years of this kind of lifestyle, according to Swami Brahmeshananda, to produce the sannyasa state. And in it, beings are abiding by this code of material welfare and the highest good. That means as one enters the householder state, all one's, what one manifests in terms of artha, right livelihood, it's held in trust. It's held in trust for the children. It's held in trust for the holy beings. It's held in trust for the good of society, for the benefit of all others. It's not to be enjoyed selfishly. Otherwise, it binds one to the world. So these 4 stages of life, brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa, they align up with dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, which are the purusharthas. And we see that here, that beginning with student life, and again, the order of society such that all young people began by learning about the Dharma and learning how to do the sacrifices, learning how even to be a good householder in the context of that Dharma we were talking about. Satya, then Dharma manifesting as cosmic order and moral and societal order. They learned all of that through study of the scriptures. And in this way, a person marches along the path of progress until they attain the supreme Dharma of all beings, realization of the truth. And so then entering householder life, they already know what is the highest ideal, and they know that their life as a householder is to be given for the benefit of society. And part of the benefit of the society is dharmic children and the earning of wealth to support a dharmic family, support the holy, support dharmic causes. So wealth must be acquired according to dharma. Otherwise, instead of serving a spiritual purpose, it will aggravate greed and lust and lead to misery. And then kama is the fulfillment of legitimate earthly desires, and it must be guided by dharma or it degenerates. So one of the essential things that's learned in this brahmacharya when they're learning the dharma is self-control, control of the senses, control of the passions, the ability to withdraw the mind, because it wasn't just study the scripture, it was practice of the Gayatri mantra, practice of concentration, practice of the Pancha Mahayagyas, the sacrifice to the god, to the gods, to rishis, ancestors, humans, and others. So, so that enables them to become a householder, and maybe even become a householder rishi. So the final goal of life here is moksha. The realization of moksha is the coping stone of human life, and the pursuit of dharma, artha, kama, they only support it. Pursuit of dharma, right livelihood, satisfaction of legitimate desires only support it. So again, this is part of that amazing foundation. Are there any questions before we launch into a look at the darshanas? Okay. Oops. And before I move on to that, okay, the darshanas, the different philosophical systems of India, are going to be treated in a way in this class that is not separate. In a sense, they all complement each other. And we as Vedantists will see quite readily that Vedanta has taken in the best of all of them. And Vedanta in the well, we'll get to that later. But anyway, we're going to be looking at it in the way primarily that Swami Mukyananda presented it, as his evolutionary and historical perspective. And as we launch into it, we must remember always, so that this doesn't become like a dry study, right? We don't want this to be a dry study. The whole purpose of philosophical thought is to remove ignorance and bring the mind to a point of concentration so that we can meditate, so that we can enter samadhi, so that religion becomes not something of the intellect, but realization. And in that vein, let me read a quote from Swami Vivekananda. You must bear in mind that religion does not consist in talk or doctrines or books, but in realization. It is not learning, but being. And in another quote, he says, the old religions said that he was an atheist who did not believe in God. The new religion says that he is an atheist who does not believe in himself. Capital S there also. In another quote, he says, religion is the idea which is raising the brute unto man and man unto God. Take religion from human society, and what will remain? Nothing but a forest of animalistic beings. Sense happiness is not the goal of humanity. Wisdom is the goal of all life. The supreme goal of human life, according to Vivekananda, is to manifest the divinity that is within all beings. And how is this done? His methods were described in the 4 yogas. And the 4 yogas are also all based upon the Shruti. So let's take a look at this. We're going to make 2 passes at overviews of the darshanas. And again, I just want to say that what little bit is going to be shared is just to kind of help us have a feel, and there's plenty that is left out. So let's review this first comment, this first quote from Swami Prabhavananda. The 6 systems of Hindu philosophy are concerned with the second of the 3 proofs of truth, reasoning about truth. They have always in view the goal of the aspirant, which is final liberation. But as a means to that goal, they seek to give him a complete intellectual grasp of the self, of God, and of the universe in which he lives. So that's a very important point. We want a complete intellectual grasp of these things. And from there, deep contemplation upon all of that to get one pointed. So the 6 orthodox darshanas are called Nyaya, Vaisheshika. Sorry, I have a hard time pronouncing that one. Samkhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa, and Uttara Mimamsa, also called Vedanta. Now, in the way that these are often taught, especially in terms of overview, Nyaya and Vaisheshika are combined. They're very, very similar. They developed independently, and yet they're still considered really one school of thought. Samkhya and Yoga are considered together. And Purva Mimamsa, Purva here means prior, and Uttara means higher. And when they say that with the Purva Mimamsa, it is that it harkens to the Karma Kanda, whereas the Uttara Mimamsa, the Vedanta, harkens to the Jnana Kanda. And we can see that both of those are necessary in terms of taking beings from lower truth to higher truth. So these systems represent a progression from lower truth to higher truth. Almost without exception, critics of Indian philosophy perceive the harmony behind the apparent discord, and so would reconcile the systems as a perception of the same truth from different angles of vision. So here's when I was studying the spiritual heritage of India by Swami Prabhavananda. This is the points that I drew out of his more lengthy, compared to Swami Mukyananda, more lengthy presentation of each of these. So Vaisheshika and Nyaya, these 2 are considered the earliest and prepare the mind for philosophical thought and reasoning. They both deal with 7 categories known as substance, quality, action or motion, genus, species, and negation. The first, substance, is primary, and it includes the self, mind, or manas, earth, air, fire, water, ether, time, and space. And all the other 6 categories depend on this one. And there's so much more to this. Samkhya outlines the insentient cosmic principles evolving from Prakriti and the nature of the unchanging sentient Purusha. And come to the December retreat, because we'll be studying the Tattva Samasa Sutras, which is all about Samkhya and way more than the 24 cosmic principles. It's a wonderful, beautiful system. Tangela, also known as yoga proper, the philosophy of mind, its purification, control, concentration, meditation, and samadhis. With Samkhya's 24 tattvas as stations for concentration, it leads the practitioner to realize the supreme witness self in the state of liberation called Kaivalya, and, well, supreme state of liberation, which is preceded, sorry, this is a typo. Kaivalya is penultimate to that supreme state of liberation. And that state is known as asampragyata samadhi, which is the nirvikalpa of Vedanta. So, and so much more. Yoga and Vedanta are regarded as the chief of the 6 schools. But as we know, and as we've seen, Vedanta really builds on the 24 cosmic principles. I mean, incorporates it and builds on it. So Purva Mimamsa, the 2 main objectives. Remember, this one is focused on the karma kanda, which is the rites and rituals and prayers. The 2 main objectives are to establish the Vedas as the source of all knowledge and to explain their meaning with emphasis on the karma portions and their effects. And then Vedanta, the flower of Indian philosophy, with such main tenets as, and I bet all of you could probably recite some of these, Brahman and Atman are one, Brahman is real and the world is not. The indivisible reality appears divided due to Maya, but Brahman and Atman are not affected. The self is birthless and deathless, and many more ignorance-destroying teachings. So that's very much just a little nutshell. Then I made a second pass using Swami Mukyananda's, and let me clean up my screen here and bring up that one. See, that one needs to go though. And if there's any questions, just chime up. I hope this is not too dry, but it's, it's just kind of it's good to know where we came from as Vedantists. We didn't, what Swamiji brought doesn't just come out of nowhere. It has this foundation. So here, Swami Mukyananda gave us a real nice general points, which are good to keep in mind. Because when we come across the different philosophical systems, maybe some of us come across their sutras, and they all have a set of sutras. But we think of them as something that is written down. But all of them, each darshana has a long prior tradition, he says, and also a later vast literature. Because the thing about the sutras is that they're aphoristic and they require a lot of commentary, or their meaning is going to get lost, except for the most highly enlightened beings who will, a rishi is one who understands mantra. So anyway, they are each attributed to their systematizers who left aphoristic scriptures on their respective perspective. They all deal with different aspects of our total existence from different points of view at different levels. So when Swami Mukyananda is presenting this, it's like what he says never deviates from an appreciation of the 3 stages of philosophy. That's always operating and underlying things that he says from the way I read him. So this is important. They all deal with different aspects of our total existence from different points of view. So when somebody really wants to study the philosophical systems of India, and they study with um, with and they study this with a book or with somebody who is going to give all the details. A lot of time is going to be spent on what are the categories of knowledge? What are the ways that knowledge comes to us? What is knowledge? What is experience? We got some of this with Babaji in that I don't remember if it was a series of classes or if it was a retreat on the 6 proofs. I think that's what it was, the 6 proofs of Advaita Vedanta. So, and remember that the Nyaya and Vaisheshika system, they set that up for all the different systems. And even though when we study yoga, we're not necessarily learning those things, we're starting with the yamas and the niyamas and the rest of the 6 limbs. And we're not necessarily hearing about these aspects of knowledge, but it's in that system, it's in all the systems. So they all aim to lead beings to truth gradually, from lower truth to higher on different levels, thus freeing people from bondage to relative existence and sorrow. And then a direct quote from Swami Mukyananda. They form steps leading from the external empirical analysis of the universe into its different constituents. And by empirical, that means what we're experiencing. So the external empirical analysis of the universe into its different constituents and categories, to the psychological correlation between the internal experiencer and the external universe, and thence finally to the non-dual ultimate infinite spiritual reality through synthesis, by which he means reducing all the multiplicities down to the all-embracing reality, but step by step, not as a jump from the ground level to the roof. So here, let's look again now at Nyaya in the last few minutes. And Nyaya lays out the instruments of knowledge to investigate reality and the main proofs. It delineates the categories of internal and external experience, and these are all considered self-existing. It posits God as a perfect soul with omniscience and omnipotence, who brings together the categories of internal and external experience and connects the actions of beings with the results to their respective doers. In other words, it keeps things from being chaotic. But this God is like an extra cosmic God, as the way I'm understanding it from the presentation. The goal is the soul's freedom from the imprisonment of the body and suffering via true knowledge of the categories and non-attachment to them. Doesn't that sound like Samkhya? It accepts innumerable self-existing souls and God. See, again, it's kind of like Samkhya. Let me show you just a little diagram for those of us who are more visual here. Because I don't know about you, it always seemed like a very, very mysterious and like, it'd be scary to get into it kind of philosophy. But now I just have so much respect and reverence for how it set things up for all the other darshanas. So here we see we see God, the omniscient, omnipotent, perfect soul. And here are the 7 categories. Now, originally there were only 6, but later negation or abhava was added because it was felt important that one needed the negation of false knowledge, because this leads to nishrayasa, the highest good. So we already saw that substance, dravya, includes self, manas, earth, air, fire, water, ether, time, and space. And all the others depend on that. So quality or guna. Now don't think in terms of sattva, rajas, and tamas necessarily, um, it's not the way it's presented when it's presented in a very short way. Anyway, they're just talking about there are qualities, and qualities can only adhere to things of substance like the ones listed. And so then we only have action, motion, and karma if there are all those things contained in substance. And all the things that flow out of those can be categorized according to a large category. So there can be a generality of things, like the cowness of cows. So cows is like one large category. And then maybe I got that, or four-legged beings or four-legged beings would be a generality, and a particularity would be a smaller kind of grouping within the generality. So they get into those kinds of details, and then necessary relation between them and so forth. So that's just a little aside to give us a little more feeling for what's going on with Nyaya and Vaisheshika. So those of us who have been in SRV for some while should have a sense of the details of Samkhya. But here, let's just go run through these. We already saw that it categorizes all experiential existence into two categories, Purusha and Prakriti, also known as subject and object, experiencer and experienced, sentient and insentient. And we know that yoga builds on that. And one of the things that we are told in yoga is that the seer has been mixed up with the seen, and we don't want that. And that reminds me of something. Oh, I thought I had another. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't grab that quote. I'll have to find it later and share it. It's a self-contained system that requires no external God to explain anything. All phenomena evolves out of Prakriti, like the tree evolves out of a seed. The universe evolves for the experience of the Purusha. And though they also mentioned in the presentation about Satkaryavada that there is this, that the effect is just the cause in another form, and also that there is involution. So we have evolution coming out and involution coming in. They also hold, like the Nyaya and Vaisheshikas, that that there are innumerable souls, in this case Purushas, who are inhabiting the organisms produced by Prakriti, and they have independent experiences simultaneously. So I saw in part of what I read that Samkhya is empirical, and so that's why they would talk about these innumerable Purushas, because they were talking from the standpoint, analyzing from the standpoint of experience. So Purusha gets involved in Prakriti due to attachment and forgets its true nature via the delusive nature of Prakriti, and thereby gets embodied. And the goal, as we know, is separation from Prakriti. And this occurs with the true knowledge of the tattvas and the true nature of Purusha. Those tattvas are cosmic principles, and this leads to liberation. And so then all he had to say about the yoga system is that it uses Samkhya's system to devise psycho-spiritual methods to separate Purusha from Prakriti by stilling the vrittis, leading to true knowledge of the self, separation from Prakriti, freedom from embodiment, and regain the natural state of the Purusha, free from all sorrow. Wow. This is, I know, it's a lot. I'm tempted to just bring it to a close here so we can do Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa quickly, but more generously, especially since this is where we are. We are Vedantists. So let me just close with some nice quotes. When we were looking at the Dharma setting, the foundation of everything, and what is cultivated in this Dharmic society that gave rise to the darshanas, when we talked about the virtues, and selflessness was one of them, I wanted to read out to you something that Swami Ramakrishnananda once said. The word selfishness is not always understood. When by self, I understand the body or the little self, and I do something for that self, I am selfish. But there is a self which is beyond this physical body. When I do something for that self, that is worshiping God. The man or woman who lives in that higher self is never selfish. Try to feel God inside yourself, and you will overcome all selfishness. When you live constantly in the presence of divinity, the ego loses its power. But so long as the ego rules a person, they are its bondslave. All your anxieties and worries come from egotism and selfishness. Let go your little self, and they will all disappear. And then Swami Ramakrishnananda also said in a lecture on the necessity of religious education in youth, he said, religion takes a person to God by making God of the person. Religion is the highest chemistry, for it analyzes the compound man into the elements, ego and non-ego, the self and the non-self, the soul and the body. Religion is the burning furnace in which is burnt up all the dross of his heart. So let me close with a prayer. Om Satyena Labhyastapasa Hi Esa Atma Samyag Jnanena Brahmacharyena Nicham Antaha Sharirehi Jyotirmayo Hi Shubraha Yam Vashanti Yatayaha Kshinadoshaha Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The indivisible self of all beings, the Atman, is realized by veracity, austerity, right knowledge, and self-control, all constantly cultivated. When the impurities of the mind dissolve due to this practice, the seer beholds the self resplendent everywhere and in everything, even here in this very body, life, and mind. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all living beings. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.